Today we have a very unique build. It is taking two different sets that are very difficult to use, combining them together, and it surprisingly works out very nicely when you have things to kill. The two sets I am talking about are Pelinal's Wrath and the Thrassian Stranglers. Check this out. What is going on, guys? It is Venom Surge here, and welcome back to another episode of Elder Scrolls Online. So guys, before we get into this episode, I do want to give you all a big thank you. We finally hit over 1,000 subscribers, and I am now monetized. It has taken a while to get here, and you guys have no idea how happy this has made me, so I just wanted to say thank you, and I can't wait to see where we go from here. So with that out of the way, let's get on to the build. So first, we're going to cover Thrassian Stranglers. This is a mythic that came out in the Greymoor DLC. It is a light armor piece. Sadly, we do want all medium, but we do have to wear this as light, so that is forced. But we are using max stamina and divines on the gear. So when you kill an enemy, you gain a stack of Slode's Call for 1 hour, and you can get up to 50 stacks. Each stack will increase your weapon and spell damage by 23 and reduce your max health by 120 and reduce the effectiveness of your damage shields by 1%. So that means when you are at max stacks, you will gain 1,150 spell damage and weapon damage, which is a lot, but it will reduce our health by 6k and our damage shields are going to be reduced by 50%. Now, we can still heal, but this will push us down quite a bit of health. Another important thing to note here before we move on to Pelinal's Wrath is you will lose your stacks if you crouch or go invisible, or if you move zones, it will reset. So if you're constantly zone hopping, this won't be building up as much. However, in a trial or dungeon, you get them very quickly, so you don't need to worry about that. Now, for Pelinal's Wrath, this is a craftable set that had came out in the Gold Coast DLC. You can get a crafter to craft this for you, or you can buy it on the traders. We are wanting all medium, like I said before, with the max stam enchant and divines. Pelinal's Wrath gives you 2 lines of weapon damage and offensive penetration. Whenever you kill an enemy, you gain a damage shield that is freaking massive. For me, it's about 24k when I'm unbuffed right now. And then you also gain a stack of White Strake, which gives you 100 weapon damage, but you will take oblivion damage every second, and this goes up to 10 stacks. The damage shield scales off of your weapon damage. That's why I said when I'm unbuffed. So when I am buffed, it can be about 40k if you don't have Thrassians. And then the oblivion damage scales off of your max health. So first off, the oblivion damage is going to be 10% of whatever health you have. So currently I have 17,880 health. That means I'm going to be taking 178 oblivion damage. Now, here's where the balance comes in. So first off, we will gain 1,000 weapon damage when we're at max stacks. The damage shield that this gives you is instantly, and it's whenever you kill an enemy and it resets. So as long as you're killing something, that damage shield will be on at all times and refreshing at that size. And if I'm remembering correctly, when I was testing, it seems like every time you add 1,000 weapon damage, it will gain 5,000 on your damage shield. So the 1,000 that this will give will bump my damage shield up to 30k. Thrassian's gives us another 1,000, so that's 35k, but there's percentages involved here, so we actually get up to about 40k. However, Thrassian's does reduce the damage shield. Even with the 50% reduction, we're still going to have about a 24k shield. So it's still a huge shield that instantly replenishes every time you kill something. Here's the other thing, the oblivion damage. This is going to be direct damage, doesn't matter how much resistance you have, it will hit for that amount. So in my case, it will be hitting for 1,780 damage. Now, that is manageable. You could just put on an HOT and that's fine. However, if you have more health, it's going to be taking more off of you, which means you're going to need a stronger heal. But Thrassian's reduces your health by 6k. So that puts me around 11 to 12k health, which means my oblivion damage that I'm taking is only 1.2k. That's almost every single HOT in the entire game on a weak character. So the oblivion is never going to hurt me. And then I'm still going to have that 24k shield. So when you look at it this way, yes, I only have 11 or 12k health, but I also have a 24k shield on top of that. And that's with Thrassian's reducing the damage shield's effectiveness by 50%. So I really have about 36k worth of damage that you have to knock me down on. That's a lot more health than an average DPS, and between these two sets, I'm gaining about 2k weapon damage. And then with percentages, it's technically even more than that. So these two together are a very interesting and powerful combination as long as you have something to kill. It can become dangerous if you're just doing a boss fight and there's no adds. In that case, I would recommend just crouch. It will get rid of your Thrassian Stranglers temporarily, and then you'll have more health, so that way you don't instantly get one shot by him, since you won't have any damage shields because there's no adds. But next up, we are using Deadly Strike. This comes from PvP. You can buy this from a vendor in Bruma, or you can just go and get them from the traders anywhere. For Deadly Strike, it gives you 2 lines of weapon damage and crit chance, and then it increases the damage of your dots and channeled abilities by 15%. Everything we do is a dot or a channel, so this is perfect. We are using this on all the jewelry and the front bar. On the jewelry, we are using the Stam version of weapon damage, so we get the Stam recovery, and we are using infused. Technically, Bloodthirsty does give you a small percentage higher DPS. However, the way Bloodthirsty works is it increases your weapon damage against the target. It does not actually go straight into your stat sheet. And since we're dealing with such high numbers, if we have it on infused, we can actually push even higher because of our percentages. And I'm talking like 13k to 14k weapon damage. It is a lot, and we're not really sacrificing much because the only sacrifice we make is our health, which is covered by the shield and the HOT for the oblivion damage. So there is very little sacrifice involved here. Now, we are using 2 daggers on the front bar. They are both Nirnhoned. You could do precise if you wanted. We are around 48% crit chance on our front bar, so you could do that if you wanted to get higher crit chance. I'm doing Nirnhoned just so we can push that weapon damage even higher. But on one, we do have a life drain enchant, just that way we can gain a little bit more health because we do have another health siphoning thing on our skills. But then on the other one, we are using poison damage. If you think you don't want that life drain, you could put on flame or disease to help get even more damage on the enemy. On our back bar, we are using the Maelstrom Perfected Inferno Staff. It does not have to be perfected. That will just give you the extra penetration when you're on your back bar. You could just do it on normal and that will be perfectly fine. It increases the damage of your wall of elements per tick by 1.2k. We are using infused with a weapon damage enchant, so we can get our weapon damage even higher. Now for the monster helm, once again, we do want medium. It does not exactly matter if it is Slime Craw. I am just using that because it is giving me crit chance. Just do anything with crit chance. Slime Craw is going to be the easiest to get. It is from Wayrest Sewers 1 on Vet. Once again, we want max stam and divines on that. So guys, if you don't have Thrassian Stranglers, or if you just don't want to use it and you're worried about the amount of health you'll have, it will make your oblivion damage take more, but you will have a much stronger shield up to about like 35k. You could use Velothi's Mage's Amulet. This is from the Necrom DLC that just came out, and it will give you penetration, which is amazing for adds, and then it increases your damage done to monsters by 15%. You will gain minor force at all times, increasing your crit damage by 10%, but it will reduce your light and heavy attack damage by 99%. This is going to be really helpful for your beam since you won't have as many light attacks while you're doing that. And that is also like why I said we are using the Deadly Cloak, but the Thrassians do help kind of complement our Pelinal set. Now, for our unbuffed stats, we do have 64 attributes into stamina. We get about 14k magicka, we get about 17.9k health. I had forgotten to eat my food, so our stam is actually 30.6k. Our mag recovery is just over 800. We are a stage 3 vampire, so our health recovery is only 200, and our stam recovery is 1750. Our weapon damage, we're looking at 6.2k unbuffed. We get about 48% crit chance and a little over 5k penetration, and our resistances are around 13k. And we are using the Thief Mundus Stone, and I am currently actually stage 2. I should be stage 3, so the amount that one of our vampire skills costs will be a little bit less if you're actually stage 3. So we are looking at about 7.9k without the 2 sets involved. This is just with my potion and our Wall of Elements, as well as one of our other skills. So we do get to about 7.9k. We do get 2100 stam recovery and 1k mag recovery. The mag recovery could be a little more. We can sustain as long as we have either tri-stat potions or synergies going off. But for the most part, the mag is fine. I'm gonna jump ahead over here, and we're looking at the Trial Atronach here, and we do get to about 12.5k weapon damage, which is very strong, and this is without the Pelinals at full stacks. This does have the Thrassian and Stranglers at max, but I was not able to get dummies to die fast enough to get Pelinals constantly uptime, so this is not with Pelinals, this is just Thrassians and our normal setup, but that is already high. If you add Pelinals on top of that, easily you could say it's 13.5k weapon damage. However, there's percentages, so it's probably up closer to 14k. And now for the consumables, like I said, you might want to use the tri-stat potions just to gain recoveries on all resources and gain resources instantly. You could also use a weapon pot. We do gain brutality at all times, but we do not gain savagery at all times. It is only on our front bar, so that would be the only thing benefiting us there. As far as our food, I'm currently using Lava Foot. This gives you about 5k max stam and about 500 stam recovery. If you want a little more health, if you're not worried about that oblivion, you could take Doobie's Cameron Throne. This will give you a little more health. And if you wanted more health recovery, since we are a vampire, you could do Artaeum Takeaway Broth, which will also add some of that in. But for our damage, Lava Foot is going to be the best option. And now for these skills, now that the Arcanist has been out for a little bit, I am going to go a little faster on this since people may be a little more familiar with these skills. So first up is a skill called subscribing and liking this video to help the algorithm boost up this video and get it out to more people and helping my channel out. But next up, we got the Exhausting Fate Carver. This is our main DPS skill. You want to be doing this as much as possible. When you're hitting this, it will channel over 4.5 seconds, and it is a very long and skinny carpet that is based on where you're aiming. So as you can see, I got my little target dummy there. If I'm aiming here, it's not going to be hitting him. I do have to actually aim at him with my crosshair. It is the only thing in the game currently that really does that. Normally you could be aiming all the way out here and it would be hitting him, but not in this case. So as you're channeling this, it will deal damage every third of a second and snare enemies by 15%. And if you use this while you have Crux, it will increase your damage done by 33%, increase the duration by 0.3 seconds, and increase the snare by 15% per Crux spent. But the thing that's important with the Fate Carver beam is that you will want to only hit it when you have all 3 Crux. If you don't do that, then you are wasting out on DPS, so make sure you gain all 3 of them before you hit your Fate Carver. Next up, we're using Camouflaged Hunter. This is here just for passives. While it's slotted, we gain our savagery for more crit chance. And if you happen to critically strike on an enemy's flank, you will gain Berserk, Minor Berserk for 5 seconds. Next up, we're using Barbed Trap. When you hit this, it will deal upfront damage and then a very strong DOT on the enemy, and it will grant us minor force, increasing our crit damage by 10% for the duration of the dot. And then it also has a higher chance to apply the hemorrhaging status effects, and the enemies are immobilized if they're not an elite or boss. Next, we're using Deadly Cloak. When this is active, you will gain major evasion for 20 seconds, reducing your damage taken by AoEs by 20%. And then every 2 seconds, it will pulse, dealing damage to all enemies within 5 meters. This is also how we proc our enchants. since we are going to be in the beam for the most part, which can last to almost 5 seconds, this is going to be proccing our enchants for us since we do not have time to light attack in there. As far as the last main skill on our front bar, we are using Cephaliarch's Flail. It is a carpet, and it will do a lot of damage to the enemies, and it'll heal you for a decent amount and generate crux. This is our main crux generator. Enemies will also be immobilized for 3 seconds. Now, another thing with this is it does act like Spin to Win, so if the enemies are under 50% health, you will deal up to 100% more damage to them. And lastly, if they are hit by this, they will gain Abyssal Ink for 20 seconds, and this will increase only your damage, not your allies, only you. Your damage will be increased by 5% to them if they are afflicted by this debuff. For our front bar ultimate, we are using Flawless Dawnbreaker. This is mainly here for passives. However, if your back bar ultimate is not ready and you really need to nuke something down, it is a good ultimate. When you're hitting this, it will deal a conal attack in front of you, dealing a lot of damage, and then the enemies will gain a strong DOT over 6 seconds, and after activating, your weapon damage will be increased by 300 for 20 seconds. On our back bar, we are using Inspired Scholarship. When this is active, it will buff your class abilities, making it deal additional damage, and it will generate crux if you currently don't have any. So when you spend your crux with your Fate Carver, you'll have none and you're dealing damage with a class ability, so this will automatically give you one back during your beam, so you will only need to use Cephaliarch's Flail twice to gain your crux back up, so you will want to make sure this is on at all times. While it is slotted on either ability bar, you also gain Major Brutality, increasing your weapon damage by 20% on both bars. So that's how we have it on at all times. That's where the weapon pot is not as important. You could use a Trice pot if you want. You just will lose out on about 10% crit chance on your back bar. Now, you could use the other morph for this. It will deal damage once every 5 seconds rather than 3, and it'll be less damage. However, it will give you resources back when it activates. Next up, we are using Unstable Wall of Elements. We are using the fire version. This will deal damage in a carpet in front of you every second, and then it will explode when the timer runs out or if it is recasted. Since we are using the fire version, it will deal additional damage to any burning enemies. Next up, we are using Simmering Frenzy because we are a vampire. This is the other health draining thing why we will need a decent HOT. So this is a toggleable ability. When it is active, it will drain 588 health every 2 seconds. Now, while this is draining, you will increase your weapon damage by 80 up to 5 times. So this will give you about 400 weapon damage, but while it is toggled, each stack that it increases will increase the health cost by 360 per stack. And you cannot be healed by anyone except for yourself, your pets, or your companions. Now, you could use the other morph. This will make it so that way the health cost is cheaper. You will lose out on your weapon damage. I think it only goes up to about 300 or 350 rather than 400. And it'll make it so that way when it's toggled off, you'll heal for 50% of the amount of health that is siphoned. That's up to you though. If you're in a group, I would recommend just not even having it on at all if you're doing harder content. And in that case, I would just slot the Camouflaged Hunter on that spot instead. Now, next up, we are using Echoing Vigor. I had this on every single type of setup that I ran, including during the parse. The parse is actually legit with how I use this in combat. Echoing Vigor is from the assault line. You will have to go into PvP. You don't have to do any PvP though. Just go in there, hit the first initial quest that gives you a little tutorial. You can skip it and just talk to the main captain there, and he'll give you enough alliance points that you will be able to unlock this instantly. You will want this morph. It will make a very strong HOT over 16 seconds, and this stays on you, but it also is an AoE, so it heals your allies as well. So it's beneficial for the entire group, but this alone is enough to cover your oblivion damage. And if used Sated Fury instead of Simmering Frenzy, you'll actually be able to heal both of them at the same time with this one skill. Now, next up is our flex spot. So there's 3 things that I have been using here. So the main one that will really help your group and you is Reconstructive Domain. When you use this, it'll put an AoE on the ground, and anyone in there will gain Minor Courage, increasing their weapon damage by 200, and it gives us all minor recoveries to our resources. It will also heal you and your allies for 20 seconds, So with this combined, you can use Simmering Frenzy as well, and you can have higher health, and those two heals will be benefiting you. However, it is only on the ground. That's where I didn't use this all the time, because in more mobile fights, this thing, I was not always standing in this, so I'd rather have a heal that's on me, which is why I used the Echoing Vigor at all times. Now, the other option, if you are in a very heavy mobile fight and you really want to stick with Simmering Frenzy instead of Sated Fury, you could use Blood Mist. This is another vampire skill. It does give you more mobility. You can teleport up to 15 meters, and after you teleport, you will gain a DOT around you for 20 seconds, and you will heal for almost half the damage you cause. Now, if you cast it again within 4 seconds, it will cost 33% more magicka. So with this, if you have this and Echoing Vigor on, it gives you full mobility. It's doing damage, so it's actually helping with your DPS rather than just being an HOT like Echoing Vigor, and it gives you more mobility with that teleport. This is actually what I used in the parse. I could have used the other morph, which will give me more damage. However, I didn't use that in the actual combat in PvE, so I wanted to be real with you guys, and I used this in the parse instead. Now, the other skill that would help with your overall damage is Fulminating Rune. This does not give you any type of HOT, so you will need to use Sated Fury instead of Simmering Frenzy if you're only using Echoing Vigor for the healing. But when you hit this, it will deal DOT to one enemy for 20 seconds. After 6 seconds, it will detonate, dealing damage to all enemies within 7 meters, which will also apply that DOT to all the other enemies, and then up to 3 allies can synergize, dealing a lot of damage to those enemies. So this would give you more DPS, but like I said, it will not heal you, so you will need to swap out to Sated Fury instead of Simmering Frenzy. Now for our backbar ultimate, we are using the Languid Eye. When you cast this, it will deal damage every half second to all enemies within 5 meters, and it'll snare them by 50% for 3 seconds. And every half second, the beam's damage will increase by 7%. Now, this is a stationary beam unless you reactivate your ultimate. So normally, with most ultimates, you will only be able to cast it once. However, with this, right now it's there, I can recast it over here and it'll move slowly over there. So you do have capability to move it like that. If you don't want to manually do that, if you're in a mobile fight with a boss, use the other morph. It won't have that ramping damage effect, but it will automatically follow your target. Now for the CP. In the blue CP, I was using Wrathful Strikes to increase our weapon damage for our damaging abilities, Untamed Aggression for more weapon damage. If you're in normal content, I would recommend you instead use Fighting Finesse. I was using this because during the trial dummy parse, I was 20% over cap on the crit damage, so I did not need any more. You could also use Backstabber on top of that. And then I was using Thaumaturge to increase our DOTs and Biting Aura to increase our AoEs. In the red tree, I was using Fortified for more armor, Rejuvenation for more recoveries. I was using Arcane Alacrity. This makes it so that way if you're under a damage shield, your dodge roll costs 800 less stamina. However, if you don't want that, you could do Siphoning Spells to gain more magicka when you kill an enemy, or you could do Boundless Vitality if you did want more health. And then I was using Bloody Renewal for gaining stamina when I kill an enemy. And I did purposely only do one stage on this because I want as little health as possible. For the passes, I'm only going to cover the passes that really just affect our damage. You will want to get everything possible that will benefit your character. This is just ones that focus on the damage. So in the Herald of the Tome, we are using Fated Fortune. This will give us more critical damage and critical healing by 12% for 7 seconds every time we generate or consume Crux. This is up at all times. In Harness Quintessence, every time you restore resources, your weapon damage is increased by 5% for 10 seconds. With Psychic Legion, if you have a Herald of the Tome ability slotted, it'll increase your damage dealt by status effects by 15% and status effect chance by 75%. This is why I said for your glyph, you might want to do Disease or Flame on one of the daggers, since we already have Poison on the other. This will increase your status effects to the targets, which is nice there. And then Splintered Secrets, you gain penetration for each Herald of the Tome ability slotted. In the dual wield line, you will want to get Slaughter. This will make it so your dual wield abilities deal extra damage to enemies under 25% health. Dual wield Expert will increase your weapon damage by 6% of your offhand weapon. Controlled Fury will make it so our Deadly Cloak costs 15% less. Ruffian will give us increased damage when attacking enemies who are CC'd, which we do have multiple sources of immobilized. And then Twin Blade and Blunt, since we are using 2 daggers, we gain extra crit chance. In the Destro Staff tree, you will want to get Tri-Focused, so that way if you do deal a heavy attack, you do 12% extra damage. If you're using the Velothi's necklace, you may not want to get that. Your heavy attack is not going to matter. Penetrating Magic will make it so our Wall of Elements ignores 10% of the resistance. Elemental Force will increase our chance to apply status effects by 100%. Ancient Knowledge does not matter unless you are using Fulminating Rune. We don't have any single target abilities on our back bar. And then Destruction Expert will give us Magicka back when someone dies by our Elemental Wall. Since we're using light armor, Evocation will give us more recovery and reduce the cost of mag abilities so we can use those more often. And then Prodigy will give us more crit chance, and Concentration will give us more penetration. In the medium armor tree, Dexterity gives us 12% more crit damage, Windwalker gives us more stam recovery and reduces the cost of stam abilities, and then Agility gives us more weapon damage. Like I said, since we are a vampire, you will want to get Strike from the Shadows. When I did my parse, by the way, I forgot to get this passive. It doesn't automatically purchase on PTS like all other passives, so I was missing out on that extra weapon damage. In the Fighters Guild, you will want to get Slayer. This will increase your weapon damage by 3% for each ability slotted. That is why we have the 3 abilities on our front bar. And Banish the Wicked will make you generate 3 ultimate every time you kill an enemy. In the Undaunted, you will want to get Undaunted Command to gain more resources when you synergize, and Undaunted Metal to increase your max resource pool. Now we are a Khajiit. This gives us all recoveries, all max resources, and then an extra 12% crit damage. Now usually when you parse, it is best to be a Dark Elf. However, in normal content, you may not always have a optimized group, so you will be missing out on that critical damage, which is why I went with a Khajiit. Yes, I'm losing out on the parse, but this will make it so the parse numbers is going to be more realistic in actual combat. And then in the alchemy line, you will want to get medicinal use. This will make it so your potions last 30% longer, which will give you 100% uptime. Now for the rotations, just a very flexible rotation. You're just trying to keep up your DOTs and your HOT. So you will want your Simmering Frenzy on at all times, as well as your Echoing Vigor to counteract that. If you did have your Pelinal stacks on, then you would be taking a little more damage, but you will have more HOT. You will want to keep your Inspired Scholarship on at all times as well. So we'll start out by putting out Reconstructive Domain. This will give us our minor recovery buffs and the minor courage. And then on the front bar, what we're gonna do is we want to put out Beast Trap and then Deadly Cloak. On the back bar, you'll throw out your Wall of Elements. Swap back to the front bar, do 2 Cephaliarch's Flail, or 3 if you currently don't have a Crux, and then hit your Fate Carver Beam. Now Fiends may run out while you're in your beam, that is fine. You'll just want to hit them as soon as possible. When you're leaving the beam, sometimes your Beast Trap might be running out. That is your first priority, so you'll want to hit that if that's running out. If your Deadly Cloak is, do that. If those 2 are fine, you'll want to leave the beam with a Cephaliarch's Flail. At that point, you'll already have 2 Crux because your Inspired Scholarship will have already given you 1. So you'll hit your Cephaliarch's Flail, go to the back bar. Your Wall of Elements, you're going to want to reproc so you can get your weapon damage enchant going. Make sure your HOTs are still running. Inspired Scholarship, go back to your front bar, make sure these 2 are going. And basically, it's just a matter of once you get to 3 Crux, you want to hit your beam. Once you're leaving it, Cephaliarch's Flail, Wall of Elements. I'm going to put on Simmering Frenzy. It's just a matter of keeping all of your dots up. If Fiends do run out, like I said, You don't want it to, but it is fine if that does happen, and it will. Now in this case, I don't need as much healing because the Pelinal stacks aren't going, so the reconstructive domain may not be as super useful currently. If you ever do want to use your back bar ultimate, you want to hit it and then do your beam. So what I just did there, you don't want to do. You want to make sure you have your 3 Crux ready to go, and then you can use your ultimate and then go straight into your beam. Now, as far as my test here, so I did use all of these guys. This was that way as I'm killing him. Occasionally one of these skeletons would die, so that way I can get a single Pelinal stack. Sometimes it might be a couple, but there wasn't enough here to actually make me get to max stack, so I never got to see how high it was with the trial dummies buffs. So if we take a look here at the trial dummy, this is the one that you guys saw a little bit earlier. So we had that 12.5k weapon damage. We were about 54 crit chance. As you can see, we were way over cap when we actually had our minor force and were generating crux. Since we were around 17, you could use the fighting finesse passive to gain that 8% crit damage. That would make me on at all times, but this would push way higher. As you can see, if we focus only on him, our Fate Carver was doing 47% of our damage overall, so it is a very powerful skill. This is each hit every third of a second. I mean, this thing is very, very strong. As you can see right here, I was using the Blood Mist. If we take a look at my skills, I'm not great at leaving the Fate Carver. I am wasting a good amount of time from this, but everything else I am pretty tight on. If we look at my buffs, the minor force was running out about 6% of the time, which is not great. Inspired Scholarship only matters to stay on when you enter it, so that way it generates that immediate crux. As you can see, things fall off, but even with all of that, we still hit over 100k DPS without the Velothi's mythic. Now, as far as our health, as you can see, I was at 13.6k. So this is a fight from Vollenfell that I did. As you can see, we did only get about 35k DPS, but that is by myself. I did not have any type of tank to reduce the armor and any other healers to give me the major courage and stuff like that. So this is purely solo, no companions or anything. And even with all of that, as you can see, our max health was around 12.7k. Now during this boss fight, we didn't have many adds, so I was only around 10k to 9k weapon damage. And as you can see, my crit was low. Like I said, we didn't have any groups, and I wasn't using the fighting finesse during this, so you may want to be doing that instead to gain the crit damage. During this Imperial Overseer, there were some adds, so I was able to get about 10.7k on my own. So we can get very high weapon damage and still have a good amount of crit chance and crit damage. Now during this, I did not have minor force on at all, as you can see here, so obviously my crit damage is lower than it should be. So that would have been about 96% if I actually had it on here. And then finally we have Boil Bite here. As you can see, almost about 10k. I did actually have my minor force on for once, and things were decently up for a good amount of time, and my health was around 11.9k. That means our oblivion damage was only about 1.2k every second, and we'd have a 25k shield on us. But yeah, it was nuking everything, as you can see here. During boss fights, you might want to get rid of your slows if there's no adds, that way you don't get insta-killed, since you won't have a damage shield. but you could also use this in something like Spellscar or in the Skyreach if you want to farm XP. This is going to be a very heavy killing machine, and you will never need to worry about dying as long as you keep up your HOT. So guys, this build was a very fun one to come up with. I saw the Pelinal set and I was like, that reminded me of Thrassians after noticing the combination of the low health with the oblivion damage, but having that damage shield. Like, this thing I feel like could be a lot more fun, especially if there was a set that I might have missed that does a similar effect that might also help complement these two other sets. Please let me know if you guys have any ideas for that. This is a very fun build. I might even build this on my actual account as well, just because this thing nukes things so fast. But I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Please like and subscribe if you guys want to see more of this content and get notified whenever I release an episode. I always like to do fun builds like this that are still decently strong, but they are not meta at all, so that way you're not having to do the boring same old things all the time on every class. So guys, hope you have a good day, and I will see you guys next time.